In the autumn of 1887, a federal land surveyor named Edmund Randolph Holt set his oil lantern on a limestone shelf 40 feet below the floor of a Greenbrier County hollow and opened his field journal to a fresh page. What he recorded over the following 11 days: passage dimensions, water flow rates, barometric pressure readings, and a series of hand-drawn corridor maps, would not enter the public record for 65 years. According to the National Archives Record Group 57, which catalogs early correspondence and administrative holds for the United States Geological Survey, a portion of Holt's survey materials were transferred under an administrative designation in '89, cited only as sensitive mineral assessment, pending geological review. The file was not formally released until 1952. No follow-up review is on record. No explanatory notation accompanies the release. The Appalachian karst belt runs beneath more than 8 states, from Alabama north through Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, West Virginia, and into Pennsylvania. Beneath it lies one of the most structurally complex cave networks in the Western Hemisphere. The Greenbrier Valley alone contains over 500 individually documented cave entrances within a single county. But what Holt's account suggests is not a series of isolated chambers connected by narrow crawlways. The language of his released notes, read in sequence, as the 1952 package allows, describes a continuous, laterally integrated passage system running at depths and distances that the survey vocabulary of 1887 was not quite prepared to express. The number that appears without annotation on page 34 of Holt's recovered field notes is this: 217. That figure, written next to the abbreviation ESTCON FT11, diff, represents what Holt appears to have calculated as an estimated continuous elevation differential, a vertical range of over 217 feet through connected, traversable passages, measured using a surveyor's chain and a mercury barometer by one man in 11 days without electric light. To understand what that figure implies, one must consider the hydrology of the region in which he was working. The Appalachian karst system was formed through the gradual dissolution of Ordovician and Silurian limestone, a rock deposited between 440 and 485 million years ago, by mildly acidic groundwater moving along fracture planes and bedding contacts. According to Dr. William White, whose foundation text, Geomorphology and Hydrology of Karst Terrains, Oxford University Press, 1948, remains a standard reference in speleological research. The hydraulic gradients in mature Appalachian karst can sustain phreatic conduits, water-filled pressurized tubular passages that extend horizontally for distances exceeding 30 miles before surfacing at a spring resurgence, 30 miles horizontally, beneath the oldest mountain chain in North America. The speculative research question this context raises is not a new one, but it remains formally unresolved. To what degree does the surveyed extent of the Central Appalachian Cave Network represent its actual extent? Current hydrological modeling, as outlined in White's work and subsequent USGS karst assessments, suggests that for every documented passage mile in this system, groundwater tracing data points toward 3 to 5 additional unmapped miles in the phreatic zone, flooded, pressurized, or simply too narrow for human entry at any depth yet attempted. Holt's 217 feet is a single data point, but in a system of that implied scale, a single uninterpreted data point carries a particular kind of weight. Here is the anomaly embedded in Holt's account, and here, immediately after it, is the standard geological explanation that follows. The anomaly, in the released portion of his notes, Holt describes encountering a passage section containing what he records as formations, fibrous in texture, distributed in columns of regular interval, not attributable to frost action or water deposit by my best estimation. His accompanying sketch shows tall, parallel structures rising from the passage floor at consistent spacing, between 3 and 4 feet apart, ranging from 6 to 11 feet in height, extending across a section of passage he estimates at 40 linear feet. The exact phrase Holt uses to avoid a conclusion is, "I cannot account for these by any formation process I have been instructed to expect." The standard explanation offered by karst geology for columnar cave formations is speleothem development, the well-documented process by which calcite supersaturated water deposits calcium carbonate as it drips through cave ceilings, building stalactite downward and stalagmites upward until the two eventually join into a column. This process is governed by the rate of carbon dioxide degassing at the drip site and the dissolved bicarbonate concentration of the water source. According to a 2003 study by Fairchild and Baker, published in Quaternary Science Reviews, speleothem growth rates in temperate cave systems of the Appalachian type typically range from 0.01 to 1 mm per year under stable climatic conditions. That rate is the critical measurement. Columns of the height Holt describes, between 6 and 11 feet, would require between 1800 and 3300 years of continuous, uninterrupted deposition at the documented upper growth boundary. That is not an impossibility. What remains genuinely unaddressed in the published literature on central Appalachian speleothems, however, is the lateral uniformity Holt's sketch implies. Consistent spacing, consistent diameter, consistent height, distributed across 40 linear feet of a single passage. Standard formation models account for individual column development. They do not formally account for the kind of synchronized, evenly distributed array Holt records. A second chemical anomaly is embedded in the same 1952 package, a separate page, apparently an assay summary attached to the survey materials, records elevated concentrations of amorphous, non-crystalline silica in the cave floor sediment. Not the crystalline silica native to limestone country rock, but amorphous silica of the type associated with silica permineralization, the chemical process by which silica-bearing groundwater infiltrates and gradually replaces organic biological material at a molecular level, converting it to stone while preserving its original structure. The assay page records the finding. It offers no interpretation. It ends without a conclusion. The formation Holt described in 1887 are not without parallels elsewhere. This is the observation that current geological models have not formally addressed in a unified comparative study. In Movile Cave, Romania, a sealed subsurface ecosystem isolated from the surface atmosphere for an estimated 5.5 million years, Romanian speleologists Cristian Lascu and Serban Sarbu documented. In their 1954 survey, published through the Emil Rakovița Institute of Speleology in Bucharest, passage structures with columnar features exhibiting chemosynthetic mineral crusts inconsistent with standard calcite deposition. The cave's internal geochemistry is sustained entirely by hydrogen sulfide oxidation, a process independent of surface photosynthesis, and produces mineral structures which Lascu, in a corresponding research note from that survey period, described as without ready surface analog in the regional stratigraphic literature. 7,000 miles east, in the Phong Nha karst system of central Vietnam, a Devonian-era limestone plateau, geologically contemporaneous with the Appalachian formations, both laid down during the same broad period of equatorial shallow sea sedimentation. The cave systems documented in French colonial geological surveys from the 1890s describe similar columnar interior structures in the deeper, non-navigable passage section. Those surveys, held in the archives of the École Française d'Extrême-Orient in Paris, record column diameter and lateral spacing intervals that, when compared to Holt's West Virginia sketch, fall within a margin of 8%. Across a physical distance of 8,700 miles, through cave systems that formed on separate continental plates, in rock deposited in separate geological epochs, in limestone that has never shared a water table, a watershed, or a continental shelf. a single uninterpreted assay note, a single unchecked field sketch, filed in 1889, released without comment in 1952, and a number, 8%, that, at that distance, current coincidence models were not designed to comfortably absorb. What Holt assembled between 1887 and 1889 was, in the most precise sense of the phrase, an archive organized before anyone knew what they were archiving. The measurements were taken, the sketches were made, the assay samples were catalogued and tagged, and then the material was filed, not destroyed, not analyzed in a published study, not formally refuted, simply filed under an administrative designation in a holding category that kept it from being read for 63 years. The Smithsonian Institution's Bureau of American Ethnology has no formal record of Holt's survey materials in its indexed geological collections. The USGS Historical Archive in Reston, Virginia acknowledge Record Group 50th as a category but have not, as of the most recent publicly available finding aid, produced a specific entry for Holt's Greenbrier fieldwork. This is not unusual as a matter of historical record for the administrative culture of the 1880s federal surveying apparatus. Institutional inertia, the tendency of organizations across every era to route anomalous data into holding categories rather than interpretive ones, is the ordinary, unremarkable explanation for most silences of this kind. But ordinary explanations carry their own specific gravity. The archive organized before anyone knew what they were archiving does not disappear. It accumulates as limestone accumulates, layer by layer, in slow pressure, in complete darkness, in a silence that has no particular interest in being disturbed. Holt surfaced on the 11th day. He sealed his lantern. He submitted his materials to the regional USGS office in Wheeling, West Virginia. According to the transfer documentation in Record Group 57, he never filed a follow-up survey request. No formal record exists of anyone asking him why. And in the 65 years before that map entered public view, the question that the archive itself was waiting for, the one that would require someone to go back down, with better instruments and a different set of assumptions, and look again at those columns spaced 3 feet apart in the dark. That question was never formally posed by any institution whose records are currently open to the public. Whether it has been posed privately in documents not yet released is a question the archive does not answer. It simply waits, organized, patient and complete, for someone to decide what it was they were filing all along. The content in this video is produced for educational and documentary exploration purposes. Historical attribution and speculative frameworks presented here are intended to encourage further research, not to assert definitive conclusions about the geological or archival record.